All right, welcome in for today's discussion as we talk about in-season player development. I'm Evan Skilleter. I'm with Tyler, Neal, both of us of Run the Show. Ty, excited to be with you, man, and excited to talk about in-season player development. I think it's one of the harder topics to cover when you think about coaches trying to balance their player development with their team concepts and making sure that people are on the same page there. It's hard for players to know like what should I do during the season that doesn't interfere with what my coach is trying to do. You know, when there's trainers elsewhere, not in programs but still working with players, how do they run things? So, I want to talk about a bunch of topics today. And Ty, how about we just start with your overall philosophy, kind of broadly, on the topic of in-season player development?
Sure, and I think the biggest thing here is just that it's a balancing act, right? Whether you're a coach, um, you know, balancing, working on getting better as a group, as a team, whether it's, pick and roll defense, continuity with your offense, and those team concepts, with, hey, at the end of the day, the player's got to feel good, confident about their skills, because if they don't, that other stuff doesn't even matter. So, my general philosophy is, kind of take care of the players first. Like they got to feel good, they got to feel confident about their skill set. And then, really just knowing the biggest thing with this is understanding your players, having that relationship with them, and understanding, how they react to and how much they need, right? Some players, some teams may need more individual development and more touch points throughout the season with the individual skill or the cognitive side of things. Other teams may not, right? So just a balancing act, understanding your team and understanding your players and kind of how they're able to operate in the season with both sides of it.
Yeah, so from a coaching standpoint, when you're thinking about those team concepts and you're thinking about developing your players individually, you only have so much time to practice. Smaller schools maybe less time, some prep schools maybe more, college schools even more than that. But even then, there's not a ton of time, right? So how do you find that balance between putting in your team concepts, putting in your offense, your defense, and also developing your players individually?
Yeah, no, I think it's, when that official practice starts, whenever it may be, September, October, November, depending on the level of the school that you're at. Yeah, certainly, majority of your time as a group is going to be spent on, installation of offense, of defense, of team concepts, and it's 100% necessary. I think that's an obvious statement. I think the best coaches I've seen do it and that I've been around figure out creative ways to sort of bake it into their day to day without it overloading players, without it taking away from the team concepts. So, I think utilizing smaller doses is sort of how you make it work. In the off season, you have the luxury of, well, I don't have to be, prepared for practice and really get after it in practice for, 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it may be. And you can kind of just let it rip and spend an hour in the gym, an hour in the weight room, right? Once that official practice starts, your time is limited. And the other side that comes into play is what we've heard a lot of the last several years is just the load on your body and the toll and the recovery aspect. So that's all kind of into the taken into account now in that equation. But I think the best way to do it is small doses, right? So, whether it's 15 minutes before practice, 15 minutes after, and then even just utilizing a 15-minute segment in your practice that addresses, some of these more individualized ideas, just so that you're ensuring, that again, players are getting some individual attention, they're staying sharp with their skills, they feel great about their shot. And then, cognitively, they're sharp and they're getting better and growing on the cognitive side of things. So I think the short doses is the recipe and sort of the answer. Um, and I think at all times you're always evaluating, right, as a coach. Um, sometimes you may add more, sometimes you might take away. But as I said at the beginning, it's just a balancing act. But I think in season, small doses and just keeping your thumb on it and constantly evaluating where you're at.
So you've worked at multiple levels, right? You've worked at the college level. You played Division III. You coached Division I. You coached in the NBA. You've coached in the G League. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences and how some of the guys you've played for or coached with have run their practices and found that
Sure.
balance?
Absolutely. And again, I've been lucky to kind of learn from a lot of really, really great coaches at different levels. I had a great high school coach. I obviously played for my dad in college and know how he does things inside out. I worked for, uh, a Hall of Fame college coach in Keith Dambrot, who did things, differently from those other coaches that I've been around. And then my time working, in the NBA and the G League, obviously saw some really great things and was able to pick up a lot of great stuff. So, a lot of my stuff is a culmination of all of those things, but I think the short doses is something that I really picked up, when I was coaching in the G League and even if it's on a game day, like that 15-minute individual session with a player, over the course of 50 games, that adds up to, hours, right? And then, if you're at the college level and you do that and you have a player for 3 or 4 years, just think of all the time that ends up being where, hey, is it a 50, it's only 15 minutes, but like it makes a difference. And I never really saw that or believed in that until I was in the G League. Um, just the little micro sessions that you get with players and how it adds up and makes a big difference over the course of time. And so again, I think that's something that I will always take with me. Um, but yeah, it's and again, I think that the really good coaches just do a great job of, you know, hey, I may get to mid-season point and you know what? I know I got guys that can shoot the basketball and we're just not making shots. So sometimes it's just simplify, right? Let's spend 20 minutes and just get a ton of different shots every day and hammer it home and get our guys really feeling good about shooting the basketball. And I think there's so many intricate, things we can do nowadays and with training and skills and everything else. But, the really good ones know, um, how to read their players and what they need at certain times throughout the season. Um, I think the other thing is, again, I said it earlier, just understanding your team, understanding your players. Um, you know, I I'd been around guys and teams that were maybe a little bit more of a veteran group, older, more mature players where, hey, if we were kind of had a lighter load for our team practice or had more off days or something like that, I knew that they were going to play harder for us because of that, because they're mature enough to handle it, and the rest was what they needed. Whereas, if a younger team or a more developing team, you got to utilize all those practice hours to continue to get better and instill, that work ethic and grittiness. So some teams may need more. They may need to utilize those micro segments or more practice hours into the development piece. But, you know, again, knowing your player is an older player, more mature, experienced player, you may want to make sure he's really focused on the recovery because I think recovery is part of the development process as well. And so really understanding your team and your players and what motivates them, what allows them to excel is a big part of that development piece. Um, and it seems simple, but again, I just think it's such an important aspect of it all as well.
Nice. So I want to think about from like a player perspective and mechanical developments in the middle of the season. So I think the easiest topic to think about with basketball is shot mechanics, right? Making corrections to a shot, mid-season adjustments. A lot of coaches, myself included, a little bit afraid to try to make adjustments in the middle of a season when it could certainly ruin somebody's shot. But there are certainly other ways. You need to talk about defensive technique and mechanics, or screen coverages, or setting screens, whatever it might be. These mechanical adjustments and development. I think most people think off season is the time to make those changes. But where are you at on that?
Great question. So, I think let's start with shooting. Shooting is such a unique skill, and it's a touchy skill. And it's a lot like a golf swing, right? It's um, no, I don't think you can teach shooting the exact same way to every player, right? And that's what I believe. That's what our staff believes, right? Everybody moves different. Um, the way we're built, right? We all, mechanically, we all move differently. So we're not all going to shoot the ball the same way. So, um, and it's such a confidence skill, right? Like good the best shooters are the most confident, right? Steph Curry go start the game 0 for 7, and that's not slowing him down. He's open, he's still shooting it. And you just have to have that belief system to be a great shooter. So I subscribe to the idea that, hey, in the middle of a season, mechanically, I'm not messing with your shot mechanically. I think it's a sweat equity thing. I think it's a confidence thing, and it's a belief thing. So, if a player's really struggling to shoot the ball, I may give them like, one thing to like focus on. Um, and it, a lot of it I think has to do with your pace into your shot, like a lot like a golf swing. If um, when I'm coming towards the ball, right, and I decelerate, that's when you become inaccurate. Same thing with a shot. If we're, kind of hesitant about our shot, we lose that confidence, right? As we're approaching that catch into our shot, we decelerate to just really try to control our movements. And that has nothing to do really with the mechanical and the shot path of my shot. Sometimes it's more about just the confidence and being aggressive into that shot and generating that pace and rhythm. So while it's something they could focus on, for example, it's not necessarily a mechanical, hey, you got to get your elbow here, you got to change your wrist here. It's more of a confidence, belief, and a rhythm, I think, focus than anything else. But mechanically, I'm staying away from really, trying to adjust the shot path or the mechanics of somebody's shot mid-season. Um, Now, on the other side of it, other things, yeah, I think mechanically, technical movements of, hey, yeah, sure. And everything we do, we teach things, if I'm defending a ball screen, right, there's a technique to it. I hear the call, I get into that player's hip, I'm forcing him into the screen, right? The threshold of the screen, I get skinny, I got to get my hip over, right? So those are things where we can get better at during the season, mechanically, technically. Um, and I think most things are like that, but your jump shot is so uh can affect so, our entire game. And um I think the tough part is as players, as athletes, so many of us base how well we're playing or how we're feeling based on how well our shot feels, right? And but we can still be good players and play well without shooting the basketball well or without making shots, right? You can impact the game in so many other ways, and it's so hard uh, to understand that as an athlete because you want to shoot the ball well and feel good about it. But um, I think everything else is stuff that in season you can chip away at mechanically, technique wise, whether it's finishing, using your body more on finishing, getting reps with that, defensive techniques, things like that are all stuff that um, you can certainly continue to work on, even quote unquote change during the season that I think are beneficial and just, you know, because let's think about it. How many reps are most players getting in the off season, where they're really working on our ball screen coverage technique. It just doesn't happen very much because you're not forced to do it, right? Um, so I think in season is some of the best times to create those good habits with technique and things like that. So interesting question. The jump shot is just such a unique, I think in all of sports, right? Your golf swing, your jump shot, um, you know,
I'm a
obviously
baseball guy, so
yeah,
pitching mechanics too, right
your
in there,
pitching
right?
mechanics, those are all they're such touchy things and they can affect your psyche so much. You just want to it's very delicate, but great question there.
All right, so you've talked about recovery a little bit, but I want to get into it now. Okay, so what's your perspective or your philosophy on balancing work with recovery?
I think that again, I think in a lot of cases, we overthink the recovery aspect, not in a way that it's not important or that you shouldn't do it. I just think, um, especially for I think younger, I want to choose my words carefully, younger players or, um, I think obviously youth players, young play, under the age of 17, 18, we just want to make sure that they're learning, they're having fun, they're competing, they're learning good habits, and we're not burning them out, right? And I think once you get to, 18, 19, to me, you're still a young player developing, right? You're not a full-grown man. You're, I think, emotionally, socially still developing. But I think you're to so I think like we want to push them and create good working habits. Um, instead of, uh, while, teaching the importance of recovery and taking care of yourself and understanding what to eat and hydration and how good sleep actually is for you. I think for those guys, the maybe fully grown guys, but are still developing, 18, 19, 20 years old, let's push them, right? Let's develop good habits. I think the recovery piece for them is understanding how to take care of yourself, right? Like, hey, yeah, you can't eat, you can't play at a high level and feel, really to take care of yourself and and eat off the dollar menu or drink a cup of pops every day. It's just not. So I think understanding simple things like how good sleep is, it's probably the best thing you can do as an athlete in terms of a wellness aspect. And then I think again, kind of as I mentioned earlier, if you have more mature players or that are going to handle business more individually, you can sort of, manage that load a little more like hey, yeah, you're good, man, get off your feet. um you go get on the Normatex, get treatment, take care of yourself. I know you're going to play hard, I know you're going to get your work in, sort of thing. So again, it's a balancing act. Younger players, we don't want to burn them out, but we want to instill those work habits and that work ethic and 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 just create those disciplined habits um, um, early on without giving them too much. You know what I mean? We don't want them to get too comfortable taking days off without, it's a balance. We don't want to burn them out, but we want to instill these habits. And then as you get older and more mature and are able to understand those things and handle your business on your own, that's where I think, you can really be a little more lenient and off days and hey, at a certain point, it might be more beneficial for you to recover and get treatment than to just grind yourself on the court. So, again, it's sort of circumstantial, and I think that the essentials are important for everybody. Understanding, hydration, eating, sleeping, stretching, and how your body works are so important um, at all levels.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to add something here, and any coaches listening, this is really for players, but you can give this to your coaches too, right? I think if you're a player that's looking to be recruited, looking to play at a higher level, coaches want to know that you know how to take care of your body, or at least you're serious about it, right? As someone that scouts players for our recruiting service, and I'm in gyms all the time, I'm at practices, at games, whatever. If I see a guy that shows up before a combine type event or a showcase type event, he hasn't had breakfast yet, he's not, not going through stretch. He can be the most talented player on the court, but in my report, I'm going to write he's not serious about his body, not serious about taking care of himself, because coaches want to know that. Right. And now listen, big programs, they're going to have some resources available to you, people that'll help you with your diet, people that'll help you with this and that. But if you're not serious about it in high school or when you're younger, coaches are going to recognize that, right?
100%. And one of my points here that I have written down, uh, you know, to sort of pull all this together is like, yeah, you know, at all levels of basketball, there's going to be different levels of resource, right? High school, small college, you might have only one, two, three coaches. So, you know, yeah, you're not going to have somebody that can stretch you, you might have to stretch out yourself but the interesting thing is like, even at the highest levels, like, NBA guys, right? It doesn't matter. High school, if you're a high school player, if you're a college player, even NBA guys, like the guys, at the end of the day, it's on you, right? As a player, it's your responsibility to do these things, right? And no matter what level of resources you have available to you, right? Like there's NBA guys that I've seen they've had every resource available to them and they still don't take care of themselves. You know, we can put everything in front of you and educate you and everything, but if you don't do it and take care of business, it doesn't matter, right? I've seen high school players, small college players with, maybe an eighth of resources available to them in terms of recovery, nutrition, performance, amenities that take care of themselves better than, professional players. And at the end of the day, Um, it's our job as coaches and trainers and mentors to educate and encourage and put those things in front of you. And when you're with us and on our time, we're making sure you're doing those right things. But at the end of the day, it falls on the individual to take it seriously and to execute, those things as well on their own.
Yeah, and the other note about that, about college coaches looking for guys that are already ready or already know how to take care of their body. Look, with the transfer portal, big time colleges are way more selective with who they're offering scholarships to, right? They want to know, they have the luxury now of knowing they can recruit guys from the portal that have been through college programs and know what they're doing. They know how to take care of themselves. You have to stand out anymore. Like they have to, if they're going to offer you a scholarship or you're going to get a scholarship as a high school player right now, and get an offer at a big school, you almost have to prove that you are ready to be in a Division 1 program, a big time program, right? And that's why again that ability as a youngster to know how to manage your body and manage your workload is huge. Hey, last question here. Let's just talk about helping players find trainers during the season, right? Some high school coaches or any coaches are going to say, no, 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 work with me during the season, not with a trainer. Some coaches say, no, no, it's cool. Like, what is the best practice when it comes to working with a trainer in the midst of your season? How can your trainer and your coach get connected? What kinds of stuff should we be thinking about there?
Yeah, so I think in general, no matter what point of the year we're in, working with a trainer and selecting one and who you decide to work with, you know, one thing I would recommend looking for and making sure of is that that person is purposeful with their time with you, right? Are we just doing a bunch of random things, setting the cones up and, you know, running around and doing things, look, if you're in the gym, if you have a ball in your hand, it's great. You're going to get better, but you can maximize your time so much more, working with someone that's purposeful and has a plan for, understands where you play at and what you're going to do on offense and defense and the style of play of the program and the coach. Um, and how does that apply to you and your role, right? So I think in general, whether it's the off season, in season, that's important to do and make sure the person you're working with is purposeful in regards to you and the team that you're playing for. I think in season, obviously follow the same suit, but that trainer or coach or whatever it is that's working with you privately, I always try to make sure that, whether it's myself or one of our staff members, we're aligned with that coach. And hey, coach, this is supplemental to you and your program. Because at the end of the day, if we're not working on things that your coach wants from you and that fits into his style of play or what he's expecting of you as the player, we're wasting our time. We really are, right? If your coach is telling you you gotta figure out how to impact the game without the ball in your hands, and you go work with a trainer, and all you're doing is, three dribble combo moves and everything else and step backs. Um, how is that going to help you earn more minutes and earn more trust with your coach? Because at the end of the day, that's who you have to, um, I guess, please. That's, like, and it's at all levels, right? In even the NBA, uh, as good and as talented as most of those guys are with the basketball, some of them are going to play off the ball. And when, they're working out with their development coach and everything else, that's what NBA development coaches are so good at is being creative in ways to get guys better in their roles that's aligned with the style of play, aligned with the coach and the program. And so I think that's so important. And I think it's lost so much that, hey, if you're going to work with a trainer, with somebody else outside of your school, I think it's great. Because, especially in high school and college, a lot of schools and they don't have the resource. They don't have enough coaches to provide that one-on-one attention to the level that some players may need. So I think it's great that a player wants to train and do extra work, but it has to be aligned with the team that you're on and the coach that you play for. And I think if it's not, you're kind of wasting your time. So that would be my recommendation to any player. And I know that's something we really make a conscious effort to do. And it can be simple things like, hey, show me some clips of your your offense with your school team so that if we're working on shooting, we're working on shots that you're getting within your offense, right? Or if you're the point guard, a lot of your reps come from a live dribble, you bringing the ball up the court. If you're a three man and you're a three and D guy, a lot of your reps are going to be playing in space, playing off the catch, right? Let's not waste our time. Let's get better at the things that you're going to do in the game and the positions you're going to be in, because ultimately that's going to allow you to be more successful in helping your team be more successful. So I think that's the best advice I can give for especially young players that do want to get in the extra work with a trainer in season, off season, whatever it may be.
All right, I know I said last question, but I've got another one. I want just some things that we I want to touch on before we leave here. For any players looking for a trainer, any coaches looking to get into training, any parents that are wondering if their trainer's doing a good job, like what are some things for trainers that we should that they should be staying away from, or if like parents are seeing trainers for their kids doing this, like what are some red flags or some things we shouldn't be seeing?
I think really a lot of it has to do with what I just talked about and just being purposeful and having a plan rather than all right, show up and all right, let's do these cones for 10 minutes and then this or that. And you know I think being purposeful, as I discussed, I think some alignment with the coach that you're going to play for, the school that you're playing at, their style of play. uh, And I just think, obviously looking, what's the background of this person that I'm interested in working with? What players have they worked with? The players that they have worked with, did they get better? Right? Um, ask those players, reach out to the players that have worked with. Hey, how was your experience with this guy? This and that. And then, like, has this player or coach trainer that I'm working with, have they coached? Because not to say that great trainers don't have to have coaching experience. I think sometimes some really good trainers haven't coached and they're just great at, bringing out individual skill sets and players. But I do think, having understanding and context of, um, you know, coaching and coaches is certainly going to help because again, at the end of the day, you're only as good as how good you're going to make your team and how you can play into what your coach wants you to do, right? And so, is your trainer telling you to do things that your coach doesn't want you to do? right? It's so counterproductive. So, those are all things that I would look at if I was a player, a parent. Um, and, certainly there's a lot of good trainers out there right now. But I think
There's a lot
you
of there's a lot of bad ones too. It's just so
there's
we're
bad,
clear.
yeah, just like anything. And I think it's great though that, there's been a training boom and everybody wants to train and get better and put in the time. But, you also have to understand how to play basketball. So that would be my final point is just like, we don't want to get good at training. We want to get the goal is to become a better basketball player, right? And understanding that. So adding in, read and react portions of your training, right? Where I'm decision making instead of just everything scripted. I think, at a certain point, if I'm working with a trainer and he or she is saying, all right, you're going to do this move, and then finish off this foot, we're going to make 10. That's great. We have to develop the rhythm. We have to develop that skill. But at a certain threshold, doing scripted movements and moves and drills only gets us so far. Because in a game, we have to be reactive. The defense does this, I'm reacting without really thinking, because that's how I've trained. So all the skills that we've worked on in the footwork and the finishing and the things that I can do with the basketball are great. You have to do those, but now I have to train reactively and as a basketball player and be able to, um, innately make those decisions with my body and with the skills and the footwork that I've trained.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for the chat. And why don't we end by telling everyone where they can find you online and run the show?
Yeah, so general information about Run the Show, just runtheshow.us will be our website. You can learn a little bit more about us, our backgrounds, what we're doing. Our Instagram page is the same, runtheshow.us. This is a great time to start planning out your off season this spring and this summer. If you're in Ohio, if you're in Western Pennsylvania, want to get in touch with us, feel free to reach out. We'd love to help.